Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this LinkedIn audio session titled Win with Words, How to Use Communication Skills to Increase Your Influence and Impact. Looking forward to delivering this one. So a brief intro. I am Buki Ishola. I'm an executive coach and I work with senior professionals and leaders and business owners to support them to master the attributes that change how they're perceived, how they're paid, and how they're promoted. And these are the attributes that I focus on supporting people on in my coaching program that I run. And we're going to be talking about just one of those attributes today. Specifically, we're looking at um, communication skills. Now, if this is the first time you're joining me, let me get a thumbs up. If this is the first time you're joining one of my sessions, give me a thumbs up. And if you're a returning attendee, let me get a love emoji. If you've listened to me before, either one of my webinars or this, then give me a love emoji. So briefly, in the wider context, okay, thank you, Steven, and thank you, Queen and Irene, for joining for the first time. In the wider context, yeah, communication is one of the vital attributes that we really do have to master, how we are communicating, how we are receiving communication, to one of the areas that we really have to master in order that we thrive in our careers and we get to wherever it is that we want to get on. And like I said, in my work, this is part of what I focus on. Now, the focus of this session is going to be around how you gain influence, how you build relationships, how you move people to action, to the action that favors you. Because the reality is, for all of us, we are all involved in getting people to take action. We're involved in delivering results, either through people. Right. And we know that people can be complicated. People can be challenging to work with. So when we do get a handle on this, when we master how we communicate, then we put ourselves in a much in an enhanced situation to really be able to create change. So it's a very broad topic, communication. And so I'm really going to invite you to listen to it with your own context in mind. There's so many areas and there's so many specific scenarios that we could really zero in on, but it's going to be a generic session. But then, listen to it with your own situation. And I think this session is really for anyone where if you find yourself that you're in a position where perhaps you notice yourself not saying what you really mean to say, not saying what you really mean when it matters. Perhaps you're not really getting what you need from people. Maybe you feel like you're not saying it well. If you're in a work corporate setting, perhaps you feel like maybe you're not coming across as senior as you would like. You're not coming across as clear as you would like. Maybe you're worried about people's judgment when you're communicating. Perhaps you are tolerating behaviors that you would not ordinarily not want to tolerate, but you don't feel empowered or don't feel positioned enough to be able to express yourself. Or maybe you're someone that you shy away from having the focus on you. You don't like conversations being focused on you. Maybe you shy away from talking about your achievements. There's so many ways in which we can self-diagnose that actually working on my communication skills is something that is really that is something that would be game changing if I put more effort in. Maybe it's a case that you shy with speaking to clients, with pitching with clients, if you're in a client facing role, challenging stakeholders. There's several situations that, like I said, would communicate to you that actually, focusing more on this would be important. So this session will really help you expose some of the areas that you can invest in and do some work so that you can begin to operate differently and really position yourself to get different results. So and what happens when we fix this area. So thank you everyone else that's joining. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Akwasi. Thank you for everyone else that has joined. We're talking about communicating our work, winning. How do you win with your words? And again, just to repeat, the focus of the session is on one of the key attributes that I see really make a difference and make an impact in how well we are able, in how people are perceiving us, how well positioned we are to being promoted, and how well positioned we are to being rewarded appropriately in our careers, in our businesses. So we're really going to be looking at how do you move people into action? How do you get people's buy-in? Again, this session will be relevant to you. You know, you can, if you notice yourself doing some of these things, not saying what you really mean when it matters, not being as vocal as you would like, shying away from having the focus on you, being worried and concerned about other people's judgment, being worried about you not coming across as clear enough. This session will be, really relevant to you. So what happens when we fix our communication issues? Number one, self-expression. We find ourselves expressing ourselves more rather than engaging in self-censorship. And I find that this is really the path to true joy and fulfillment in our career. When we are in a place where we are comfortable, we are saying what we mean, we're speaking in accordance with our values, with obviously with respect for the parties involved, but we are speaking to our core. We are speaking to the things that are important to us and in a way that is important to us, and we don't feel a need to censor ourselves, to edit ourselves, because that's one of the ways that we actually lose our power in communication. When you find yourself editing yourself, censoring yourself, and the words come out just a little weaker than they would otherwise have been if you were truly to stand in your power and speak from a place of purpose, from a place of intention, from a place of conviction. So when we really get focused and intentional and lean into our own authenticity and realness in our communication, we find ourselves just being more self-expressive rather than self-censoring. And consequently, you find your confidence begins to grow. Not only that, your confidence is seen by others. And when we, confidence is like the packaging will come in, right? It's the icing on the cake of whatever we do. When we're moving confidently, we're speaking confidently, we're doing whatever it is in a manner that just exudes confidence. It actually changes how people perceive our performance. It changes how they're perceiving how brilliant whatever it is we're doing. Consequently, your executive presence grows. You gain more respect, of more authority is accorded to you. And that naturally, that would open up opportunities. If you're in a corporate setting, lead to opportunities of promotion, more varied projects, more exposure. So it can only be a good thing when we get it right. And I've seen it, personally in my own journey, both as a corporate professional. I spent 15 years in the corporate world. And when I begin to work on myself, areas around like my confidence, my communication skills, how I navigate conflict, how I communicate in general, how I build relationships, how I build connections in the workplace. All of those areas, those are the attributes that I really talk about in my coaching program. When we begin to work on all of those, it actually begins to change the trajectory and the level of authority and how we're perceived and how opportunities are made available to you. Available to us. So it's a real game changing. It's something that has a direct, I think, tangible and intangible benefit. And I also see it in my coaching practice with people that I coach around, working on their communication skills, how persuasive and how intentional they are when they're speaking, the level of conviction that you're speaking with, being connected with your own words, being connected with what's important to you, and really expressing that confidently. It gets people pay rises, it gets opportunities, it opens doors for people. So I've seen it personally in my own career, in my own business, and also in the people that I've coached with. So this really, really makes a difference. So I would say working on your communication is right for you, if you no longer want to be censored or be self-sabotaging, if you no longer want to be missing out on opportunities, then this is clearly right for you. So give me a thumbs up. Let me be sure everyone is following me, because the challenge with doing an audio session is with a webinar, you can see people's reaction. Thank you. Thank you for everyone responding. You're with me. If you have any questions, feel free to react. So I should let you know on the right of your screen, you should have some react. You should have a react button. So if you have any question, just go ahead and raise up your hand and I will bring you on to ask your question. So before we get into the meat of the session, I want to talk about two places in career. And I want to talk about this because it's really, really important. Many times we're very focused on the physical, what we have to do to get ahead, what skills do we need, what qualifications do we need. And those are all very important. But I'm sure like you know people who are highly experienced, who are highly qualified, but yet the impact, the influence, the remuneration they are getting in the marketplace doesn't quite correlate with the level of experience and the level of qualification they have. So we know that the qualifications and all those physical things, they alone they're not enough to get us to where we want to get to. So when I talk about two places we have in our career, the first place is a psychological location that I call struggle town. And I spoke about this recently in my most recent newsletter on LinkedIn. When I talk about struggle town, what are the characteristics of struggle town? Well, you're in struggle town, like the psychological position in your career or in your communication, in the area of communication, when you find yourself holding back, when you find yourself hesitating, when you find yourself censoring what you're saying, when you find yourself just not being in a place where you ought to challenge, where you find yourself not truly stepping into a leadership role, perhaps you're in the position of driving the conversation and steering the conversation, but you find yourself almost taking a back seat. Your meetings are taken over by other people's agenda. I would call that place struggle town. Right. And we really don't want to be in struggle town because struggle town, as I say, is just characterized by not feeling not performing at the highest level that we're capable of. So what we really want to move into is move into a place that I call, Freetown. Freetown is a place, remember, we're talking about psychological positions here, it's a place somewhere in your psyche. Freetown is a place of self-expression, is a place of wisdom. And Freetown is really how we find fulfillment in our roles, right? It doesn't mean we always get a yes, but it means we are honoring the truest and highest version of ourselves. We are honoring ourselves at our very core with the way we are communicating. And I find that there's to transition from struggle down to Freetown, there are really three things that you have to do. And we have to work on all three. If you do one of the three, it really doesn't work. If you do two, it really doesn't work. You have to focus on all three in order to move from struggle town to Freetown. And the three areas are: number one, ensuring that you have the right mindset. Number two, have the right actions. And number three, the relevant skills. So let me explain that. Right mindset is really a function of your own beliefs, your thought patterns, and how you're approaching whatever situation you're in. And the reason your mindset is important is really mindset drives behavior, behavior drives results. So to change results, you really have to, people can't change their behavior permanently, consistently, except they actually work on their mindset first. That's why you find people going up and down. You might be able to do things for 3 days, but then being able to continue, you begin to struggle. For you to have a change, a permanent change in habit, permanent change in behavior, then you really have to change that which is sponsoring your behavior, sponsoring your actions, and that is really a mindset. which is around her attitude, her belief system, our thought patterns. So those are the three areas that you have to focus to move from struggle town to free town. The right mindset and the right actions. Because if you are in a place where your communication in the past or actions that you have taken in the past have landed you where you don't want to be, then clearly that's evidence that one has taken the wrong actions. Right actions is about what will move you forward, what moves you towards your goal, what moves you towards the right results that you want. And the third point is the relevant skills. When we have the right mindset, when we are taking the right actions, well, the impact of those two are going to be reduced if we are not skilled enough. And I think the example that came to mind as I was thinking about this session was the three lions, like the English, the football team, the English football team, the England's men's football team. What happened recently, you have individually talented guys, and they have been through a hard time that they've overcome. They're courageous and they've been praised. The young men that took the penalties, they've all been praised about how courageous they were, about how bold, how brave they were. So clearly they have the right mindset, they're taking the right actions. But the reality is, skill-wise, well, they haven't individually, they may be very skilled, but together as a team, they are not playing in a way that actually, that positions them to be able to have won the cup, to have beaten Spain yesterday. So that's the point I'm making around. You need to have mindset is important, actions is important, but you must also have the skills to match. And what I find with career professionals that I work with, we tend to be very good with the skills, right? Because from a young age, we prioritize skill building. But mindset is often where I see that people fall behind. And consequently, if the mindset is in the right place, you won't be able to take the actions. So those are some, like, I guess the introduction to what I'm about to talk about. But it's important to really fully understand that to make sense of the content that I'm going to be delivering, particularly around what pillars of winning with words, because that's what the title of the session, how do you win with words? I'm going to be describing some pillars that allow you to win with words, and there are really 4 of them. But happy to pause to take any questions. If you have any question, feel free to react, press one of the reaction buttons, and I will take your questions. And also let me know if this is resonating. Give me a thumbs up if this is resonating, if you're getting something out of this. I just need to be sure that you are with me. Thank you, Queen. Need to be sure that you are following me. Thank you. So we move on to talk about the 4 pillars. Thank you, Shaun. 4 pillars. I hope I said your name right, whether it's Shaun. 4 pillars, 4 things to bear in mind in order to win with words, because ultimately that is the end goal, right? Whenever you're communicating, there is something that you want to, there is an end game, there is something you're looking to derive from that communication. So the first, I think there are 4 P's. The first one is preparation. Now, I know, everybody here, it's a fair assumption that you would prepare for your meeting. So I'm really not talking about the basic level of preparation where we're preparing what we will say, how we will say it. You're anticipating alternative viewpoints, potential challenges and objections, and you are preparing to speak to that in your communication. I think all of those are the physical aspect of preparation, and I'd expect people do that. But a very important aspect of preparing, of making the right preparation when you want to communicate, especially when you have important meetings or something, really important meetings or stakeholder communication, is to really think about your mindset, the mindset that you are going into the conversation with. And I find that often we don't prepare mentally, we don't prepare emotionally. And how do you prepare mentally and emotionally? It's really looking at what could trigger you in the meeting, what could come up. Yes, you've prepared your talking points or the matters you want to raise, whatever that may be. But what are the sensitive areas that could cause an emotional reaction for you? Because the reality is we're emotional beings, right? Maybe in a meeting, in a pitch, someone, is antagonizing you, someone is challenging, there are particular difficult characters in the room that are distracting or they're or disruptive. How have you prepared yourself to be able to deal with those so that they do not derail you? And that is a big element of mindset preparation, really preparing that, okay, I'm going into this meeting, I'm going into this dialogue, I'm going into this conversation. What, where do I need my mind? What do I need my mind to be focused on? Right. So imagine going into the meeting and you're a little bit nervous compared to going into a meeting and you are confident. Those are two different states to enter a meeting with. And that will definitely interfere with how you are hearing what people are saying and consequently how you are responding. So in preparing your mindset, also think about what energy are you going into the conversation with? Like I said, a nervous energy, a defensive, a combative energy. Perhaps you still had maybe a conversation you had with a colleague in the past in mind, and you're still carrying the burden from that. Maybe you're carrying the burden from maybe you did a pitch, the last interview, things didn't go well, things went south, and you're still carrying the emotional burden of that on yourself, even as you go into this new communication, into this new conversation. But that's not going to be helpful. So part of preparing is really, really looking at, okay, what is interfering? What could interfere with my performance in this meeting, in this conversation? What could interfere with what I want to get out? What could interfere with how I come across? And really almost do a detox, be present to that and remove that out of the way. When we do that, we're preparing fully. When we only look at just preparing what we will say, and I call that's just like basic level of preparation, and we can easily be derailed. Things can happen that could easily derail us if we haven't considered, what could trigger us emotionally, what could shift our mindset, what could change our state, and think about, well, how are we going to recover ourselves? So give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Before I move to the next one, any question on that around this point around preparation, preparing your mindset, doing some mindset work before going into any conversations, stakeholder or important conversations that you want to engage in? So after preparation, the other point is be present. Yes, be prepared for your meeting. That's one of the pillars. The second one is to be present. We have to guard against being in the room, but not really in the room because our mind is preoccupied with other things. That's not how we're going to win in our communication. And I think being preoccupied with other things can really be on a spectrum. On one hand, you can be preoccupied with not looking bad. And on the other hand, you can be preoccupied with how you're going to make yourself look good. Being so focused on, saying the right things, saying the right words, being perceived in a way that you think it will be right for you to be perceived. And when we're doing all of that, what we're really doing is like you're actually taking your focus off the conversation. You're taking the focus of the other parties. You're taking the focus of the agenda, right? Your objective, and you're putting the focus on you. Because often when we're in a conversation, we have something we want to derive from the conversation, we want to get out of the communication we're in. Well, part of the way we really achieve that is staying connected and staying engaged with the parties that we're speaking with, that we're involved in the conversation with. And when the focus is on how we look, how we're coming across, how we sound, maybe concerns about our accent, we had taken our minds off the objective. And it can actually have the opposite because now the focus is on you, the focus is not on the conversation anymore. On the other hand, whether you're preoccupied with trying not to look bad or trying to look good, you could also be preoccupied with preparing a defense, an attack, a deflection, really depending on the power play in the conversation that you're in. But again, all of those actually detract you from winning in the conversation because again, that is self-focus. So how do you stay present? How do you stay present? I find, one example recently is the fact that, I joined, I volunteered for a program that I was invited to, and I said yes to it, but I'm not really that interested in it, right? So I go into the meetings and I actually struggle to concentrate because I'm really not interested in the subject. But I volunteered, so I'm going to honor my commitment. And there might be people listening where you are in that situation where you go into meetings and yes, Buki, you're telling me, I hear you, go into these meetings, be present, but actually find what is being discussed quite dull, or I don't find it engaging. Well, my response to you will be, well, you have to find your own vision for the conversation. And that's what I've had to do with these conversations, this program that I volunteered for that I find quite dull. You have to find your own personal vision for it, because otherwise what happens is we go in there and we make no impact, we make no difference. And the reality is there is nothing that we cannot learn from. I'm a coach, so I know I'm in conversations with people, and they have their plan is that they would get A from something, and then it actually turns out they get B from it. So what I mean is that there's nothing you cannot learn from. There is really nothing you cannot benefit from if you set your mind right. So how do you stay present in conversations, especially those that may even be more challenging and be more tasking on you? Stay curious, stay interested, and stay invested in the conversation. So it's really asking yourself, what can I gain from this? Why am I in the room? And getting connected with that, and that can allow you to stay present. Here's the problem. When we don't stay present, what's likely to happen is that, well, we get disengaged, we miss the nuances of what's being communicated. And if your objective is to win in your communication, if your objective is to get results, because that's the point of communication, right? If you're involved in communication, there's a end goal. And if you are at the point where you're not fully present, then you are going to miss the opportunity to truly engage, to understand the nuances of what is being discussed, to be able to understand things at a deeper level. And that's where really the results that we're after can be. Being able to not just understand something at the surface level, but understand the tonality, because I said this, that it is people's behavior that really tell us what they believe. People can say anything. And if you notice that even as I'm speaking to you, we're talking about win with words, but I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about the actual words that you're using, because the actual words you're using is no, they are important, but they're not the most important part of the communication. Because you can say the most beautiful words, but if they don't ride on the right energy, if they don't ride if they don't ride on the right body language, then your communication could be missed, it could be misinterpreted, and it could not have it may not have the results that you intend. But by being present in the communication, what you are able to hear is, you can hear people's tonality. Behavior is the proof of what people believe. I can be saying something, and then you look at my body language, you realize it's actually different. You look at the tone that I'm saying things in, you look like actually the tone doesn't quite match the words. If the tone tells you what is really being said, and when we're not present, those are the sort of things that we miss. So that's the second thing, right? So we talk about being prepared, and the element of preparation that I really drew it in was around the invisible element of preparation. And really that's what I'm covering in this session. I'm looking at the invisible element of communication, because I guarantee many of us are very familiar with the physical element, what you have to do. You can pick any book on communication skills and they will talk about, a lot of the physical things that you have to do. But often what changes conversations, what gets us results, are those invisible elements. And that's what I'm really drilling in on here. So we've talked about mindset. I've talked about your presence, really being present in the meeting, staying curious, staying interested, and staying invested, and really finding your own individual ways of how you are going to do that. So you are not distracted and disengaged from the result that you want to create. And then the third point that I'm going to talk about is choose your positioning. What do I mean by choose your positioning? Is really thinking about how you are going to position yourself in the conversation. What is the attitude? What is the demeanor? What is the position that you are going to adopt? Are you in the meeting to lead the conversation? Are you in the meeting to steer the conversation in a particular way? Are you there to just participate? Is agenda, and sometimes even understanding other people's agenda in the meeting as well. Because if you understand your own agenda and you don't understand other people's agenda, then others can may be able to derail your meeting. What you want to do is really choose your position. And I don't think you go into a meeting, okay, this is a role I'm playing in the meeting, or this is a role I'm playing in the conversation. It's also maintaining that role as required or changing your role as required, right? So perhaps you go into a meeting where you really, your role is just to participate and there's some particular things that you want to get out of the meeting, and then the meeting is going south. Well, do you go in there and just allow the meeting to run the way it's running, or um do you try and recover things so that you can win? Remember, winning with words, winning in our communication, so that you can still walk away from that meeting having gotten what you wanted. So it's really around choosing your positioning and ensuring that you don't allow language, other people's words, their silence, their mannerisms to trigger and derail you from the position and the role you need to play in that conversation. Often when we go into meetings and we're not clear on what we want to get out of it, we're not clear on the right position that we need to take in order to get that thing, then it's easy not to win with our words. It's easy not to win in the communication. So it's worth pausing. And I'm speaking generically because let's say you're going into an interview, well, the position you take in an interview will depend on who is interviewing you, will depend on how the interviewer is coming across. If you have an interviewer that is quite dominant, or if you have one that is less dominant, how you behave in that interview may need to adjust so that you're still in a position where you are connecting appropriately with the other person. Because with all communication, there are parties involved, right? There is your own preferred style of communicating. But if you're mindful of the overall agenda, if you're mindful of what you're aiming at, then you know that you have to keep flexing your style and flexing your position depending on the other party so that you can get the result. I think people land themselves in trouble when they go in and they are fixated on this is how I am, this is how I operate, and you stick to your guns. I think there's something around being agile, being flexible in our communication if we truly want to win. But I do think it's not a case of just flexing anyhow. I think you do have to stay true to your core, you stay true to your values, but you allow yourself to adapt and change in order to fulfill your ultimate purpose. So I hope that's clear. So we've talked about, we're talking about the 4 pillars, like I said. The first one is preparation. The first one, being prepared. We've talked about being present, and your presence in the meeting. The third one is around your positioning, really thinking carefully about the role you are playing in the meeting and the role you need to play, in order to get the outcome that you want. Any questions so far? Please react with the react button. If you just actually I can't see. I thought you could raise your hand. I'm quite actually I can't raise my hand obviously because I'm the speaker, but I think you would have one of the reactions you would have is to raise your hand. So if you have any questions, press the react button, raise your hand, and I will take your questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right. So moving on to the final P that I'm going to be talking about is planning your participation. Okay, so I'll recap. The first one is preparing, being prepared, but we talk about really the key point here I'm talking about here is being prepared in your mindset. Um, being present, choosing your positioning, and then finally really planning your participation. And I'll give some steps here. Some of you might be aware of there's a famous quote that you often hear about when it says seek to understand first before you seek to be understood. And that's a really important phrase or important quote to bear in mind. Um, intense conversations, right? The reality is, we're emotional beings. In many of our organizations, the world generally is actually more tense. People are more stressed. People are more reactive. So I think it's really more than ever. It's even more important now that we actually seek to understand people's position before we respond. So really, and how do we really get a proper understanding? Is listen for beliefs. This is what I do, giving some tips. Really listen for the beliefs and the assumptions and the concerns and the emotions that are behind the words that people are saying. That is what really allows you to truly understand. So let's give an example. Let's say your boss is unhappy that you sent an email without running it past them. Maybe you sent an email to another department, another colleague, or a stakeholder, and your boss is a little unhappy that you sent it. On the surface level, you may think, well, why doesn't the boss trust me to send the email? It's a basic email, there's nothing to it. That's from your perspective. But if you seek to understand where the boss is coming from, you may understand that actually there may be other things at play. Maybe the boss feels that it was right for the email to come from them. Maybe the boss feels that given some other situations or politics that is happening, it was better for them to have been involved in the conversation. So rather than reacting and leading to concluding that perhaps you're not trusted, perhaps you have a micromanager as a boss, is really, really drilling in and asking, seeking to understand, well, where are they coming from? Asking the question, okay, what were you interested in looking at in the email? Why did you want to look at the email? Finding the right words to really drill in to understand. And it's the same thing, if you're in a client-facing role where you have clients that you're dealing with and situations have gone bad, or people there's a complaint or there's an issue, and your first reaction is actually, oh, this person is wrong, the other party is wrong, is really to suspend judgment and truly engage from a place of curiosity, which we spoke about earlier, engaging from a place of curiosity, from a place of learning to truly understand what is at the root of what they're saying, what are they really concerned about, what are the beliefs that are behind whatever it is they're saying. And when we get that, then we are in a position that you can actually respond wisely. And I think before we actually get to the position of responding in situations like that, is really acknowledge people. And I think often when we find situations get tense, maybe someone is getting emotional, but it's a tense conversation, it's a conflict. What happens, the other party may then also get emotional. And if we're going to be masters in communicating and we want to be winning with our words and winning in our agenda, you really want to take a pause before reacting and actually understand first and then acknowledge, validate people's feelings, validate their thoughts if you think it's appropriate. Really act, because validating people actually allows people to feel, enables people to feel heard, right? It doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do whatever it is they're asking of you, but it's actually you're showing that you've heard and you are validating them. And after that, then position yourself to respond. And I say, we have to be responding in a smart and savvy response. If you follow political shows, certainly in the UK political shows, you find when they're interviewing politicians and, they ask them these leading questions. And you really have to have the smart, well, the not so savvy politicians could answer a question where they literally put handcuffs in their own hands. They answer a question stupidly. They fall into the trap of the journalist or whoever is interviewing them. But if you find the savvy politicians, they are able to stay on point. And even when someone has asked them a question where literally, they could fall into a pit by answering it, they have a way of giving a savvy response that just goes around it and they avoid the pit. And that's obviously where we need to get to in our home conversation, because you are going to be put in tricky positions. The more senior we get in your career, the higher the stakes, and then the more difficult circumstances, difficult situations we encounter, and we have to be particularly skilled and navigating those conversations appropriately. So really understanding where people are coming from. Secondly, acknowledging and validating their feelings, because people cannot hear you. People cannot hear you. People cannot buy into your ideas, buy into your solutions if they don't feel heard first. And and there is the time when we actually need people to feel heard is when when things are charged. And many of our conversations, when the stakes are high, they do get charged. So when it comes to responding in a smart and a savvy way, and I always talk about, there are really three broad categories of response that you can give to anything. It's either you say a yes with a caveat and with qualifiers and with conditions, or you give a no, or you give a direct no, or direct no with caveats or qualifiers. Or the third option is really you cannot give an answer, and you don't want to respond, you cannot respond, it's not right for you to respond, and you say that accordingly. And I think whatever situations we're in, whether we're responding to people or people are asking things of us, those are really the three responses we find ourselves. You're giving a direct yes, or you're giving a yes with caveats. You're giving a direct no, or you're giving a no with caveats. Or you're not giving the person what they want. And you have to find a way of saying that and making it land as nicely as you could. But also bearing in mind that we don't have control over people's reaction, that it doesn't matter how nice you might want to make it come across, they may still not be responsive, and they may still not like it. So seek to understand first, acknowledge, and then respond, give a savvy response back. And in terms of guidelines for responding, personally, I'm a big advocate for staying true to your values when you are responding. When I studied, if some of you may know, my background is I'm actually a trained accountant. I don't work as an accountant anymore. But one of the courses that we studied when I was studying for my accountancy professional exams was they talked about, the sleep well test. When you're responding to situations, ensuring that, when it's time to sleep at night, you are going to be able to sleep well. And that's what I use as a gauge when you're responding in these difficult situations. Like, is this going to pass the sleep well test? When it's time to sleep at night, am I going to feel comfortable with myself that what I said was in line with my values and I didn't compromise my stance? So when it comes to responding in those difficult situations, I invite you to consider what is going to be in line with your values and what is going to allow you to, pass the sleep well test. So as a summary, what I've discussed today, we've talked about how to win with words. And what I've really concentrated on is talking about the invisible element of communication, the positioning that we can take, the mindset that we can go into conversations with, and how we can prepare and how we can position ourselves such that we truly, the words that come out of our mouth, they have more power, they have more influence, they have more impact. And that is really based on the energy that the words ride on. And that's what I've been really talking about, those invisible elements of communication. Communication is obviously a really broad and huge topic. There are other areas, but this has been broad to cover different areas. So how do you apply this? Well, you might apply this, think about your interviews, think about maybe when in conversations with in challenging conversations at work, maybe calling people out, maybe when you have to challenge authority, challenge stakeholders. These principles all come into place and they have to be adapted appropriately for your situation. And in my work, this is what I do around helping people really, elevate their impact at work, elevate their influence, elevate the way they're perceived, the way they're paid, the way they're positioning for promotion. And one of the tools, the key elements that really feature in that is communication. So if any of this resonates, you want to talk about it, or you want to get more direct support for yourself, then I'm going to invite you to reach out to me. Happy to have a conversation with you. If you have any, I will open the line to take any questions if there are any questions at the moment. But if you wanted to just discuss further around how this might apply for the particular situation that you are in, then yeah, feel free to reach out.